Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're going deep into the Quran, exploring Chapter 3, The Family of Imran. We'll uncover its messages, its stories, and how it speaks to faith, identity, and even community. Ready to explore.
Absolutely. This surah, it's packed with insights that really resonate even today.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't, Quranic scholars or anything, can you give us a little background?
Of course. The Quran is the central text of Islam, believed by Muslims to be the literal word of God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. It's organized into chapters called surah, each with its own focus. Think of it like a library, with each surah exploring different aspects of faith and life.
I got it. Like each surah adds a piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly.
And the family of Imran is named after Imran.
Exactly. Imran's a significant figure in Islamic tradition, the father of Mary, who, as you may know, is the mother of Jesus.
Okay, so we're already dealing with some major figures here. It's interesting how these stories connect across different faiths. But where does this surah even begin?
Well, like many surahs, it starts by setting the foundation. The very first verses emphasize the core Islamic belief in the oneness of God, the idea that there is no God but Allah.
So it's establishing the basis for everything else, like a mission statement.
Exactly. These opening verses emphasizing Allah's oneness are like a mission statement for the entire surah. You could say even the whole Quran. It's about recognizing that all power, all creation flows from this single source. You can see how this would be incredibly grounding for believers, especially during times of uncertainty. And then to really drive this point home, verses 5 through 7 talk about Allah's absolute power and knowledge, emphasizing the importance of submission to his will.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, it's about recognizing a power greater than yourself and acknowledging that your life unfolds according to a plan you might not fully grasp.
That's a great way to put it. And this idea of submitting to a higher power, it's not about blind obedience. It's about trust. It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs and striving to live a life that reflects those values.
It makes you think about how we navigate challenges in our own lives. Do we try to control everything, or is there a sense of surrender, of trusting that there's a bigger picture we might not always see?
That's a profound question, and it's something the surah explores in depth, especially through the stories it tells.
Stories? Okay, now you've got me really interested. What kind of stories are we talking about?
Well, one of the most compelling stories in this chapter, and this emphasis on unity becomes even more powerful when you consider it, is that of Imran's wife. It's a story about devotion, about complete trust in God's plan.
All right, let's hear it. What happens?
So Imran's wife, who remains unnamed in the Quran, makes a vow to God, dedicating her child, who she believes will be a son, to his service.
Wow, that's a pretty intense vow.
It is, and it speaks to the depth of her faith. She is essentially saying, whatever path my life takes, I surrender it to a higher purpose. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. She ends up giving birth to a baby girl, Mary.
Wait, hold on. So she dedicates her son to God's service, but then she has a daughter. What happens next? That's a huge GE plot twist. It seems like that would throw a wrench in things.
You would think so, right? But that's the beauty of this story. It challenges our assumptions about what it means to surrender to a higher plan. Imran's wife's faith doesn't waver, even though things didn't go as she expected. This is where the idea of trusting in Allah, even when his plan is a mystery, really hits home.
It's like that saying, man plans, God laughs. But in this case, it's more like man plans and God's like, I have something even better in mind.
Exactly. And this theme of divine will and guidance, it plays a huge role in Mary's story, too. The Quran tells us about her miraculous pregnancy with Jesus, further highlighting that sometimes the most unexpected events are part of a much larger plan.
Okay, so we're talking miracles now. This is getting really interesting. But I have to ask, the story of Mary and Jesus, it's a big one in Christianity too. How does the Quran's version differ?
That's a great question. Yeah, you're right. It's a story that resonates across faiths, but with some key differences. While in Christianity, Jesus is considered the Son of God, in Islam, he's honored as a prophet, born of the Virgin Mary, but not divine. He performed miracles by the will of God, just like other prophets before him.
So it's not that one version is right and the other is wrong. It's more about understanding those different interpretations, those different lenses through which people view these stories.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the nuances and respecting those different beliefs. But the family of Imran isn't just about stories from the past. It also offers guidance on how believers should live their lives today.
It's like a blueprint for living a more meaningful life, right?
Absolutely. And this is where the Sua shifts from narratives to more direct teachings on conduct and on community. It emphasizes the importance of unity, encouraging believers to come together to support one another, especially in the face of hardship.
Which, let's be honest, is something we all face at some point or another. Life throws curveballs, right? And it's in those moments that having a strong community, people you can lean on, can make all the difference.
I completely agree. And the Sutta, it even gets into the nitty-gritty of how to be a good person, how to build those strong communities. It talks about forgiveness, patience, even restraint when you're angry. It's incredibly practical.
So it's not just about being a good person in a vacuum, but realizing that forgiveness, patience, these things have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
The Sutta even gets into specifics about arguing, right? Like,
Right.
what are you supposed to do when someone makes you angry?
You're exactly right. And remember, the Quran was revealed in a time and place where the early Muslim community was facing a lot of external pressure, even persecution. So maintaining internal unity, fostering forgiveness and compassion, these were vital for their survival and growth.
It makes you think about the challenges we face today, the divisions in our own society. These teachings on unity, on forgiveness, they feel incredibly relevant, even though they were revealed centuries ago.
They absolutely do. And that brings us to another important aspect of this surah. Its acknowledgement that disagreements and conflicts are a part of life, even within religious traditions.
Right. Because it would be easy to paint this rosy picture of perfect unity and understanding, but that's not realistic, is it?
Not at all. And the Quran acknowledges that. It even talks about those who separated and disputed after the clear proofs came to them. It's a reminder that even with shared beliefs, there will always be differences in interpretation, different ways of understanding and applying those beliefs.
So how do we navigate those differences, especially in a world that often feels so polarized?
That's the million-dollar question. And this is where the Sutta encourages self-reflection, reminding us that judging someone's true character and intentions is ultimately up to God, not us. Our focus should be on our own actions, our own striving to embody those core values of compassion, forgiveness, and understanding.
It's about holding ourselves accountable rather than pointing fingers at others. Easier said than done, though, right?
Absolutely, it takes conscious effort, especially when we're faced with challenges and hardships. And that brings us to another key theme in the family of Imran, the importance of perseverance.
Okay, so how does the Sutta talk about perseverance? Give me some of those practical tips.
Well, it reminds believers that hardship, trials, tribulations, these are all part of the human experience. It's not about escaping those challenges, but rather facing them with faith and knowing that even in the darkest moments, there's a divine plan unfolding.
It's like those verses are giving us a pep talk, right? Like, hey, life's going to throw some punches, but you've got this. Dig deep, remember your faith, and you'll get through it. I kind of love that. And that's where faith comes in, right? When things get tough, it's easy to feel lost, discouraged. But the Quran constantly brings it back to that connection with something bigger than yourself, that reliance on a power beyond your own. It's like having a lifeline when you feel like you're drowning.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing that there's a bigger picture, a divine plan that we might not always grasp, but one that ultimately leads to reward in the afterlife for those who endure with patience and sincerity.
It's like that saying, this too shall pass. But with this added layer of knowing that your struggles have meaning, purpose in the grand scheme of things. This whole idea of a covenant with humanity, it's giving me chills. It's like this reminder that we're all connected, all part of something much bigger than ourselves. But we've talked a lot about the Muslim community. Does the family of Imran address other faiths too?
It does, and this is where it gets really interesting in terms of interfaith relations. We've been discussing Allah's covenant with humanity, but there are specific verses about previous prophets and people of the book, those who received earlier scriptures like the Torah and the Gospel.
So it's acknowledging that there's a shared history, a lineage of prophets and revelations, even with differences in practices.
Absolutely. The Surah, while affirming Islam as the final revelation, also emphasizes the common thread running through all these faiths, the belief in one God. It reminds us that despite our differences, there's a fundamental unity at the core of these traditions.
That's a powerful message, especially in today's world, where it feels like everyone's emphasizing what divides us rather than what unites us. But it's not shying away from those differences either, right? I mean, there are verses about how some who received the scriptures before disregarded it and exchanged it for a small price.
That's right. The Surah doesn't shy away from those difficult conversations. It delves into why, from an Islamic perspective, some who received earlier revelations strayed from the path. It emphasizes the importance of seeking true understanding, not just clinging to literal interpretations or worldly game.
So it's about looking beyond the surface, wrestling with those deeper meanings and purposes. I think that's something everyone can relate to, regardless of their religious background. How often do we get caught up in dogma or use beliefs to justify things that just don't feel right?
More often than we'd like to admit. But the Quran, throughout this surah and others, reminds us that true faith is about aligning your actions with your beliefs. It's about striving for justice, compassion, and constantly checking yourself to make sure you're not straying from that path.
It's about living your truth, not just talking about it, and recognizing that our actions have consequences not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. And that was a deep dive into Surah Imran. We explored its messages of faith, perseverance, and the importance of community. We even touched on the complexities of interpretation and interfaith dialogue. But here's what I'm really grappling with, and it's something I hope you will contemplate as well. If these teachings are meant to guide us toward a better world, how can we apply their wisdom, regardless of our background, to create that world today? That's something worth pondering, isn't it?